Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Power Talk show powered by Business Talks Weekly. Our guest today is building a global network of super connectors focused on high impact. He is a recently published author. Please welcome CEO and founder of Orchestrated Connecting, David Homan. David, welcome to the Power Talk show.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, David. David, before we begin a conversation, can we talk a bit about your professional background and what led you to the creation of Orchestrated Connectors?
Absolutely. So, since I was 8, I've been in the nonprofit and philanthropy sector. I worked for several different nonprofits that my mother ran. By the time I was 16, I was running national health conferences for the youth part of the March of Dimes in the United States. And by 26, I became a CEO of a very precious arts and culture foundation. A few years later, and this is navigating the world of New York City, where I've lived now for 25 years, I was given the opportunity to not only lead this foundation, but then what I would say is not an opportunity to resurrect it. The foundation lost all of its money in the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, and I suddenly had to network differently to have it survive. A few years later, I was responsible for over 85% of the donations coming into this charity because of how I built my own methodology of connection. And 5 years after that, realized that what I'd accidentally built was a private network of what we would now call connectors or superconnectors. Orchestrated connecting, which comes from my musical background as a composer and pianist, combined with my CEO executive world, became that baby, so to speak. It's now 10 years old. The global network of over 2,500 high integrity, extraordinarily connected individuals across 187 cities and 35 countries. I run 40 to 50 events a year, an annual conference. My book, Orchestrating Connection, just came out as a USA Today bestseller in August with my co-author, Noah Askin. And this next summer, 2026, I will deploy out my first startup called SOAR Connect, SOAR standing for Strength of Authentic Relationships, all aimed at solving the system of what we know as relationship value, but we cannot visualize, we cannot orchestrate the way we need to. So that is quickest version of everything I do, all based on the power of the ask and getting somebody to the right person with not just a warm intro, but matching high integrity people to each other.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing that with us. When it comes to entrepreneurs and business leaders, what sort of challenges do you see a business leader faces when it comes to networking and connecting? And how are you helping them solve?
Biggest mistake is people start to connect when they need something, as opposed to build a relationship before they do. We can smell this, every one of us listening, from a mile away when somebody wants to catch up and within 20 minutes, they're asking you for something. There's a lack of transparency because people don't want to be seen as an opportunity or a gateway to something else, especially when you or I, Evan, have built relationships with people over years that somebody just suddenly wants to hand over without that relationship being valued. The way I changed the mindset of this, which is what the whole methodology is an understanding of the work you have to do both internally to get to being more purpose-driven, transparent, and clear, and then the actions you need to take to insist that same work be done with the closest people around you. When you do that intentionally, you build a purposeful community. People don't understand the value of it until they have a need that needs to be met quickly. And the person you've known for 2 years, you've never made an ask of, goes, I'll get you to the sovereign wealth fund of such and such a country in the Middle East, because they can, but they would only do it if you built the trust first. You cannot build the trust and build the opportunity at a high level at the same time.
It's interesting. And David, how important is personal branding and a personal value? How does it help in building your network?
So there is a difference in mastering your brand. And you know what I always joke is, right, if your mother and my mother was sitting across the kitchen table, could they describe what you do, what your podcast is about, what your business is about in Dubai? Hopefully. I know my mother can now. She used to not be able to, but 10 years in of my messaging, my branding, she can go, my son's a super connector. He connects connectors of high integrity. And he does this all to make the world a better place. And so, right, I say this not in the world of fancy branding. Do you get with the swoosh? It looks like Nike. You should go buy the Air Jordans, because that's important. But relationship branding is different because there's only one measure of what somebody's brand is to somebody else, which is, can somebody describe you without you being there not only for what you do, but the fact you have taken action and done something for somebody else. Words are completely meaningless in relationship building. Only actions matter. So I am somebody, when I say proudly, I've made tens of thousands of connections, I can back that up by introducing people, obviously be too exhausting to do, but to all of the people I have helped over a decade of doing this professionally. And everyone can say, yes, that happened. This is what happened for me. And it was one of the most brilliant connections I've ever had because I was heard. The other person wanted to talk to me, and here's what we have from it. That's the most important. It's not just what your business does. It's not just who you are. It's how those are combined into basically doing what we wish the world did more, which is people doing what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, that's absolutely, I 100% agree to it. And I believe, David, you have that networking events where people come in and interact with each other, right, physically. So how do you see, like, we are well connected digitally, so how do you see that digital connection when it comes to physical connection and networking?
So what I clarify is I do both physical and virtual events. I figured out formats for both that build trust. In all events, you don't know who the speakers are. You don't know who's in your room, physical or virtual. You don't know where it's being held. You come in for a certain intention, which is that you are willing to be valued for how you build relationships and to value the others in the room because of that. However, I curate this very, very carefully. You can't just find out where my events are. You have to be nominated in or write me a note with intention because the nature of my room is the nature of incredible power. The people in my room have access to significant amount of people who own the world's sports teams, to Giving Pledge billionaires, to celebrities, to Bollywood stars, to everyone around the planet, because those most in power have one thing they need more than their assets, which are the people that they trust to help manage their lives. And even if they're not working with them, just the people that they trust to help them move their visions forward. I figured out that the layer one we needed to build wasn't access to everyone you could name. It was to build access to the people no one could name. But if you were to ask Elon Musk or Ray Dalio or Steven Spielberg or any of the greatest known men and women alive, they would never tell you who their trusted sources are. But when those people say, hey, take this call, that is true power because connectors weave in between different circles and ecosystems. And that is the power that I have tapped to support those people who are often asked all the time for a relationship that they spent years building as if it doesn't matter. It's not a currency. It's not a commodity. It's just something somebody else desires. Why not just hand it over?
Yeah, absolutely. And David, who do you look at as a competitor? There is networking platforms like, for example, LinkedIn. You have LinkedIn where people connect, and there are other companies also which host networking events. Who do you consider as your competitor?
So this has been the most fascinating journey in 10 years to have zero competition. So let me tell you why. Everyone who runs those events, who runs communities, a private family office event group, a membership group for founders, a political action committee, that person is a connector and they built something to solve a problem that they were uniquely suited to convene and to bring people together for, but no one's supporting them. So I come in with what people have often said is world's stupidest business structure. And I say, I believe in you. How can I help you? My community has zero membership fees. I do events at cost and I take no sponsorships. Can I help you? And then every node to node now, I've gone this year over 430 new people joining, is somebody that everyone else will want access to because of who they have in their community. And I'm sitting here going, you know who you should talk to? You're doing women in sports. You should talk to Malala and her husband Asser about their sports fund. Want me to connect you? So extremely high level, extremely selective. But when you're matching asks amongst the people most often asked, I found so far I have no competition because I built something that is a network of networks. And everyone, honestly, who sees this as competition then gets help they didn't realize that they needed from somebody in my network. Proof of concept over and over again because I built it to solve a problem without me at the center. I don't monetize these type of connections, connector to connector. I just built the system to facilitate it.
That's very interesting because you are at the center of it as a founder. You have building that network. But when it comes to B2B companies and some startup founders and entrepreneurs, they are good at building their company, building their product, but they are not good at marketing or networking with other people. Do you see there is a disconnect between what they want to actually bring it out there in the market and what they're actually building?
100%. And this is the problem, right? Somebody who's a visionary may not be the best implementer. Somebody who's an implementer may not be the best branding, marketing, or communicator. That's why people who do businesses like yours are necessary to weave and, connect those dots. What always is needed, and this is what happens in the nature of story after somebody has successes, certain people in every business were introduced to other people who could complement them. And that's where you have the Jobs and Wozniak for Apple. Every story of it, Gates and Allen, every version of this is two people met and then several people met. Something from that built a company that now everyone envies. What I always say is go back and look at how those people interacted. Who brought them to the same party? Who put them in the same garage, so to speak? In almost all cases, there was a connector as the catalyst for that. Therefore, that's why I encourage people to hire connectors, to work with them, to befriend them. My book helps anyone who wants become them because it's a playbook on how to build your own connection and purposeful community. All this to say that if we do this with the right intentions and integrity, we get better results. There's a strategy in it that is not about manipulating your relationships or what happens from them, but supporting an ecosystem without an expectation in return, because then it's an ecosystem you built. And that is much more power than the opportunity just in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. David, you mentioned about your book. Can you tell us a bit more about what inspired you to write that book? Where is it available and what benefit a reader would get out of it?
So if you take the business is orchestrated connecting, the book is orchestrating connections. That is available through my website. Its own URL on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. It can be shipped globally, although my publisher has more copies in the United States, so it might take a little longer for anyone listening over in the UAE or the rest of the MENA region. Honestly, what inspired me to write the book was the fact that I would sit with people that I absolutely envied. I would love what they did in this world. They would tell me what they were doing, and then I would tell them how I saw the world in terms of relationships, and they would learn from me. We're talking people who have, more zeros than most people can count, people who have overcome adversity and built incredible companies, brands, are in Hollywood and the rest. And I would sit them and I would say, there was a time in your life where what you did wasn't valued. Did your relationships help you then? And everyone says, of course not. In a moment of real tragedy, adversity, especially this thing called COVID, we all went through, where was the community that you had helped? So by turning on its head what relationship value means, my co-author and I wrote a book that is a playbook of both how to do it personally, as I'd mentioned, professionally and community. But these are practical steps that are truly deep relational psychology. So the book is for anyone that wants to better their network, better their community, understand that the people around them matter more than they think. And so we wrote something that is practical and actionable. It isn't catchy. It doesn't just coin some term and tell you to just not eat alone, as great as that book is. What it does is it shows you the system that is sitting around you that you should orchestrate. It just takes understanding how to apply very unique principles, things that most people write. You have this as an interviewer, most people don't. Curiosity, when you meet another human being, to just ask them about themselves. 70% of people, when they meet somebody, just talk about themselves. They don't ask with curiosity about the other person, which means they're not tapping into the resources in front of them, the people they can befriend, build trust with, support, who will eventually come back around and make an intro that changes their life.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful point of view. David, what is your vision for the next 3-5 years? Where are you heading? What are you looking at?
So I'm in year 4 of my year 5 strategic plan. It's unfortunately going incredibly well. So the growth of what I've built is absolutely overwhelming, but the book became a bestseller. It is out there in the world. People are hiring me for speaking opportunities. That is a huge part of how I want to push this more. Hence the goal to get on more global podcasts, because something that I've said worked with me when I worked with Ray Dalio in his family office. Something in this works when I chair a major theater foundation based on the playwright Arthur Miller, for which the A-list of Hollywood are all artistic advisors. This works. I know it works because I've run it in a purposeful community for 10 years. As I expand, my startup will launch in 2026. My current footprint are major cities across the United States, plus Toronto and London. My hope is in the next 3 to 4 years that I will be regularly with events in Dubai, in Lisbon, in Berlin, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Seoul, more of a global presence to the way that I convene and run this network. And with that, I wanted to solve one problem. And it's not a sophisticated strategic plan one, to be clear. How do I get out of the way so that the system I built of trust gets the right people to each other to make the world a better place, not just a more profitable one? I think that we as a society globally have become more and more entrenched and tribal. We try to stick with people who look like us, who sound like us. And I don't think that's ever worked. Because if you take almost everything built in innovation on this planet in the last 100 years, almost all of it was built through an immigrant, through a team that shouldn't have come together, through somebody who took their culture, went to another culture, and then saw something differently. And suddenly we have cell phones, we have computers, we have Intel chips, we have all of these innovations that did not come from people sitting in the same town with the same food and the same religion. I believe that that diversity is key to the success of our planet and as a global population. I don't pretend my little world's going to solve all that, but I know that community has, because every movement that has changed this world, it just didn't start with an idea and a person. It started with a community that became something, a current so powerful, it washed over the world and it changed that. And I think we need that at a time where we're heading towards, if anyone knows what's happening with what people call the fourth turning, we're heading towards a major upheaval that needs a different approach. My goal is to help the world as much as possible by demonstrating the power of community, the power of that personal work and self-growth, by convening a certain way, by empowering the people that I think can make that happen, the trust builders, the connectors, and launching a system, SOAR Connect, that may transform that because it puts our data of who we know in our hands alone. It gives us the option to choose to connect, to empower others, much different than current tech for which you give your data in order to be given a service. I want to turn that on its head, utilizing all of those big major companies like LinkedIn and others. But I want to put the responsibility back in the thing that AI can never change. AI can augment everything we do. I do not believe that technology will ever change how we build trust.
David, one piece of advice that you received change your perspective professionally and personally?
Tell you about what at the time was a sticky situation when I first started working with Ray Dalio. And this is with all credit and respect to working with, honestly, one of the greatest minds I've ever had the fortune to interact with, both personally and professionally. So day 2 on my job, building out Lunaclips, which was an early stage film production company for Ray and his son Paul and Paul's wife Christina. There had been some issue that happened several months before I was hired. I came in as the VP to run this thing, and I took ownership of what happened, and I started to address it, and I came up with the solution. And Ray, in his typical genius, says, that's not good enough. And I was a little shocked because I'd taken ownership, I figured out a solution, and then I presented it. It was a great solution, but it wasn't enough. And what Ray taught me, he said, you need to go back as if you were the one that made this mistake. I know you didn't because you weren't working with us at the time, but go back, address that mistake as if you made it. Now, what would you do? Took me a little bit to understand how serious this was as an exercise. I undertook it. It changed the way I view making change and taking ownership, because I came up with something that was profoundly better for what we would then build over the next several years because of that one lesson, which was it's not about shirking responsibility. It's not about taking blame for something you know you shouldn't be blamed for. But the only way to solve something that needs a real solution is to act as if everything is on the line. And then from that, you will come up with a much more profound solution to that need, which I did. That was one of the most important lessons that I've ever been given. And I'm grateful for it because it changed the way that I helped run that company. And it changed the way that then I built my own business after leaving the Dalio family officially 5 years ago.
That's amazing advice. Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. It was wonderful to have you on a podcast. Amazing, insightful conversation. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for listening.